Rob Dew with Infowars.com, and we are out front of where the Bilderberg 2016 meeting will be taking place at the Taschenbergpalais. And I'm here with Tony Gosling, 20-year investigator of Bilderberg, also of the 7/7 London bombings. Tony, earlier you told me these are the people that killed JFK. Why don't you expound on that a little bit?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that there are three major agencies involved in the death of John F. Kennedy. One is the CIA, Dulles and his people. The other is the FBI, and the other, of course, was Lyndon Johnson, who stood to gain quite a lot from it. He also started private arms company, Teammate Plus, I think it's called. You can look this stuff up, but eventually it's become Kellogg Brown Root, which is one of the biggest. What do they call it? Disaster capitalism, vulture companies that makes money from rebuilding smashed, destroyed entire countries, cities, that kind of thing. So those three together, essentially, what they've done is they've created a horrific kind of crime culture at the top in the United States. And Bilderberg was created by the same kind of people. Basically, the CIA, it's quite clear now, funded the European movement, which Bilderberg was part of, the attempt to federalize the whole of Europe. Basically, the Americans didn't like having to deal with 30 different embassies. You can understand this, can't you? Trying to get 30 different countries all to agree to what you want them to do is quite difficult. But if you can manage to federate the entire continent, 500 million people, then you only have one embassy to deal with. And that's why I make the connection between the CIA, the people that actually make money out of war. A lot of them were, like Dulles, were very closely connected with Nazi war criminals that had come over to the United States after World War II. And these are it's a kind of criminal syndicate we're dealing with here, who make money from war. So that's the guys who we've got inside here, and no wonder they want to keep it all secret, eh?
Exactly. Now, getting into the agenda, there's a few things we've heard about: the global tax they want to institute, the internet ID. Go into what you've, cover the ground of what you've heard about what the agenda is going to be and for the Bilderberg meeting.
Well, look, one of the big elephants in the room, actually, it will, I'm sure, be discussed at various points, is this whole idea of Britain possibly leaving the European Union. Now, that election, a lot of people say, oh, it's going to be fixed. Actually, there are powerful, rich and powerful Brits in the Tory party who are keeping a very close eye on that election to try and make sure it's not fixed. I'm not saying it won't be, but it's going to be very difficult to fix it. And there's been a movement in Britain for many years. We've got the UK Independence Party, very strong now, getting a lot of votes, saying we need to get out of this because nobody ever voted for a United States of Europe. If you think about it, you've got 320 million people in the United States of America. 500 million people, roughly, would be in the United States of Europe. And this is something no one's ever voted for in Britain. I think it's pretty clear to me that there's a big sentiment in Britain and in other parts of Europe. There's two reasons why other European countries want to see Britain get out of Europe. One is because the French don't like the way that Britain is always a cat's paw for the United States, trying to get them to hate Russia, getting involved in wars in the Middle East. But also they want to see something done. The Greeks tried it and failed to send a very strong message to the EU. You can't carry on with this hideous bureaucracy that's created crisis after crisis after crisis and failed to deal with it. I think a lot of these crises are deliberately created. But there's been an economic crisis. The whole of southern Europe is in a terrible situation. We in Britain are only managing to survive because we kept the pound. We didn't go in with the euro. And now we've got the migrant crisis and the refugee crisis. I don't think the refugees is so much of a problem, but economic migration, the big business that runs the EU and America, by the way, some of the same big companies run the two, they want cheap labour at any cost, and they want these people to come in. And that's the real agenda. They want to drive down wages, drive down pay and conditions for workers right across the two continents, as they've done with Mexico, bringing all people in from Mexico. Oh, they pretend that they don't like it, but actually the big corporations love all this cheap labour. And that's essentially what I think is going on in there in the real discussions. There's a lot of stuff on the agenda like Russia. Well, that's got to be on the agenda really, since that's the biggest headache for the US and for the European Union in Syria and in Ukraine. But I think that's really top of the agenda, is whether the people inside this building this weekend are going to be able to save the European Union or not.
All right, and this year, Senator Lindsey Graham, he's a sitting senator, is going to be here. Also, you've got Vernon Jordan, you've got James A. Johnson, other people who are tied in with the Democratic Party. What do you think they're going to be doing and talking about Trump and the Trump situation going on in the United States?
Well, look, first of all, they're breaking the Logan Act, guys. So when these people arrive back on their aircraft, private jets or whatever, into the United States, slap their cuffs on them. Yeah, there's no way that serving politicians should be going into a meeting and swearing oaths of secrecy that they're not going to say anything about the people that spoke to them or what's been said, and they won't even mention the Bilderberg Conference, most of them. So that's not on for our elected politicians to be doing that. They're selling out the people that elected them. I spoke to one of the police officers here last night, here in Dresden, and he said to me after I explained, because the police are in the dark a lot of the time about what's going on too, he said, so that means that when we vote, the election doesn't mean anything. Which I thought was great coming from the police. You know, that's the situation that we're in with these guys, and that's why I think, in a way, they're kind of Cold War dinosaurs whose day has gone, but they will not go because of the criminality. You know, we've got the financial criminals, HSBC, the money launderers, all these people being protected by the police in here. We've also got Mr. Kissinger, one of the biggest war criminals on the planet, and other people could be accused of war crimes, war criminals and financial criminals, but the police are facing the wrong way. They should be slapping the cuffs on these guys.
Yeah, earlier they confiscated 2 cardboard signs from these 2 individuals right here, and that was quite a well-to-do 17 police officers for 2 cardboard signs.
The trouble is they're too big to jail, and because of the criminality, these guys all stick together. They've got to stick together. In a way, it's like the kind of deals that were done after World War II. The Nazis had looted the whole of Europe, had fantastic amounts of gold, foreign currency reserved and securities, this kind of thing. But they could do deals with that for safe passage with traitors in Britain and America, and they did do those deals. Still big questions over what happened to the looted $1 billion or so from Europe after World War II. So I think these guys are a kind of legacy from that era, and their main objective is to try to control things more, and that's why they used the European Union to do it, and why the CIA funded it after World War II. So they just had the one embassy to deal with, but it ain't working, is it? And also their plans for the Middle East. The Russians have kind of put a big brick wall in front of that as well. So their plans for the Middle East are well behind schedule. So they've got a lot of work to do, and I don't think Britain leaving the EU is going to help them one bit, so I very much hope we do.
So you think that's the biggest problem, or the biggest issue they're going to be discussing is the Brexit?
No, I don't think this. I think it's the kind of elephant in the room. Okay. The organisers are very concerned about it. Yeah, and they'll be looking. This is another thing. Is Andreas von Bülow is a German ex-politician. He was under Helmut Schmidt. He was a defence minister here in Germany, and he said some really good stuff in the run-up to this conference. He explained what the conference is really about. And it's great to hear it from a senior politician, former politician in Germany. He said what goes on here is they're listening for everything the people are saying. If they say one thing against the Pentagon policy, one thing against the Russia sanctions, then their name will be marked down and they will be removed. One way or another, they're going to be gone.
All right, anything else you want to add as we end this interview?
I just think there's another thing going on here in that these guys control most of the money in the Western world. I think that's pretty clear, particularly the financial criminals, the banksters. And we're looking at the potential for a massive economic crash. In 2008, people talk about it as a crash. It wasn't a crash, it was a bailout. But if there was a need for another one, which it looks like there may well be soon, the banks don't have the resources. Nobody has the resources to refinance those banks again. So it could be a catastrophic crash. Now, people like my father, for example, will say, well, no one wants a crash, no one wants a war. Actually, some people, like some of the people in here, they can bet on which way the market's going to go now using derivatives and things like this, and they can make a lot of money out of a crash. They can clean up a lot of things, distressed assets, that kind of thing. So they will be looking possibly at making money from such a thing, which is a crazy situation for the world to be in now. Also things like commodity prices, grain prices, Cargill has now merged. You've got these massive food companies from around the world controlling the markets, total monopolies. This goes right back to the oil monopoly of the Rockefeller family, this kind of attitude where there's no fair competition, we control the market, it's all a cartel. And they know, but by controlling the financial system, that they can control the outcome of a crash, and they can clean up on the rest of us. In the background, we've got all the tech companies. LinkedIn are inside here. Previously, we've had Google. We've had, who else?
Eric Schmidt's on the list.
Yeah, well, he's on the steering committee now, isn't he? Along with the former boss of MI6 now at Christmas time. That's another thing. The Bilderberg say they only have one meeting. Well, they had a meeting at Christmas. They put Eric Schmidt on the steering committee, and they put John Soers from MI6 on the steering committee at Christmas. Maybe that was just a decision they made a long time ago. I don't think so. They do have other meetings outside here. So, that's what we're dealing with, is a Snowden type situation. Remember, Snowden has backed up with facts what many of us have suspected for a long time, that these tech companies, and I would advise some of your listeners, get off the internet, stay off the internet, because they're using the internet to gather information on all of us, political activists, possibly to take down in the future. There's a very good book by Edwin Black, a Jewish American author, the IBM and the Holocaust, and it looked at the way that the Nazis for years were gathering information on people. Nobody knew why. And then they found out, because they were going round to Jewish houses, grabbing Jewish people from properties here in Germany and arresting them and putting them in concentration camps. And we've got to be very careful about the information we share with the authorities for that exact reason.
So if anybody is online, can they find any of your work online?
Yeah, I do a weekly radio show in Bristol, which you can find online at thisweek.org.uk. And I bought the website 20 years ago, bilderberg.org. So I've been following these guys for a long time, and I've just seen the protests and the analysis and the understanding over the years grow and grow. It's fantastic.
All right. Well, there you have it, people. Right in front of the Bilderberg Hotel, we actually had one of them pull up and actually shake hands with people. He shook hands with the servants. I was very surprised. Usually they don't do that. Yeah. So anyway, this is Rob Dew signing off for Infowars.com. Stay tuned for more reports on the Alex Jones channel.